So, I wanted to talk about Trump and his appointments, his cabinet appointments, because everyone is sort of speculating about what that means because they're all Zionist and very Neocon sort of people. You know, if you've been like looking at geopolitics and doing geopolitical analysis for any period of time, or for a significant period of time, I should say, you learn that there are some situations where the best analytical approach is wait and see. Because I remember when Trump first, in his first term, and he appointed Rex Tillerson, who was Exxon CEO, ex Exxon CEO. Many people were thinking, okay, well, that's going to mean war, and a lot of people were doing analysis, and I confess that I also did at the time, and it proved to be really premature because I don't even know how long Rex Tillerson lasted. And that's the thing to remember about Trump. When he gives you this cabinet, this is a first draft cabinet. None of us know how long any of these people are going to last in his cabinet. I think he seems to be notoriously difficult to work with, and I think he went through at least a couple of different secretaries of state in his last term. I think 3 heads of the CIA and 4 secretaries of defense in 4 years. The first and the main thing that you should consider about Trump is, generally speaking, wait and see. Because there's always a huge chasm between his rhetoric and what he actually does. And I think that in terms of his cabinet appointments, he also appoints people for very on a very narrow criteria, on an egotistical criteria to some extent, and with a very specific policy in mind. Like, for example, the border, or immigration, or China, or something like that, or Ukraine. And he's not thinking about all of the ramifications that we're thinking about, for example, and the things that are our priorities are not his priorities. And that's not necessarily why he appointed these people, because of the things that matter to us, and that therefore disturb us about those cabinet appointments. He's appointing them because of 1 or 2 particular things about them that he likes. And it might even be just because they like him and they have supported him or what have you. And the main thing to remember is that none of them may last. But then the other thing to remember is that this isn't the Biden administration, which was basically when the United States, for the last 4 years, the United States has been ruled by a cabinet, not by a president. That's not the case with Trump. Trump makes decisions.
Yeah, he runs the show.
He runs the show. Within the White House, he runs the show. And this has led to problems during his administration, in that you had people in the cabinet who were doing things secretly and not talking to him and not conveying intelligence to him and information to him, like about Syria, for example. There were a lot of things going on where Trump wanted something done, and they told him that they were going to do it, and then they did something else, and they were hiding it. So I would expect that those kinds of problems will happen in this administration as well, because Trump is not a mainstream Republican at all. And I think that a lot of his cabinet appointments are mainstream Republicans who are probably going to try to to work with some sort of autonomy, and maybe against what Trump wants, or else just not telling him or not implementing what he wants, or what have you. The other thing I think to remember is that Trump is nobody's savior. Don't think he's your savior. Don't think that he's going to solve all of the problems. Trump is a ruthless businessman, egomaniac, who has his own personal private interests. To our advantage, I think that a lot of his interests align with policies that, or can be translated into policies that are less harmful to us globally, less harmful to the global south, less harmful to the Muslim world, less harmful to the Khalij, and ultimately, inshallah, less harmful to Palestine. Now, with regards to the Zionists in his cabinet, the idea is that this means that he will be very pro-Netanyahu, pro-Likud, pro-Zionist administration, and will give Netanyahu whatever he wants, and that the genocide will continue and get worse and expand. Of course, that's a possibility. But if you want to change anything with Israel, you need to understand that the hardline element in Israel is huge. The overwhelming majority of Israelis believe that Netanyahu hasn't done enough in Gaza. So like when you see the protests in Israel, they're not protesting for peace. They're protesting because Netanyahu hasn't gotten the hostages back, that he hasn't been effective in the slaughter. They're not objecting to the slaughter. So you're dealing with an incredibly radicalized extremist population, an incredibly radicalized extremist society and government. And you can't negotiate with people like that, or you can't send someone over there to negotiate with them and do deals with them, who is not cut from the same cloth. They'll reject immediately. I remember when they were they wanted to make the deal for Saudi Arabia to develop nuclear power. And the right-wing Republicans in Washington were against it and were going to oppose it. And the Israelis were asked to send over some Zionists from their side to convince Congress that it was fine. So this is the relationship. The Zionists talk to the Zionists. Only the Zionists can talk sense to the Zionists, because they're so propagandized and indoctrinated that anyone who isn't pro-Israel with a Star of David tattooed on their forehead, he's not one of us.
Right.
So we don't listen to him. Like I said in the chat, you can't send Norman Finkelstein over to negotiate with Netanyahu. You'd rejected outright.
Yeah.
They're all part of a club, and they'll only talk to other members of the club.
It's very insular.
Yeah. But here's the negative, extremely negative possibility also, which is that if the long-term plan for Palestine is a one-state solution, then it could be the precursor to a one-state solution, could be, and there could be people who are supporting this and who are promoting this and who are interested in achieving this, the Israeli annexation of Gaza and the West Bank. That's not something you can discard as a possibility. They could actually have that in mind.
In that scheme of
that now we're going to take over. Everything will be under one jurisdiction, under one government, and then functionally you have one state. And therefore, why are we negotiating a two-state? Now we negotiate for Palestinian rights under the annexed territories, and rather than them being annexed, they just become integrated into the totality of the country. And now our struggle becomes for negotiating for equal rights and citizenship.
Yeah, as opposed to expulsion.
Yeah. But of course, the Zionists will want it to be expulsion.
Of course.
That will be their plan. This is the other thing that I wanted to say with regards to that. I've noticed some people in the discussion group, in the Middle Nation discussion group, talking about, it doesn't really bode well that there are these Zionists in the cabinet, that there are these neocons in the cabinet, and so forth. You don't run the world anymore. It's not that whoever is sitting in the White House or whoever is in Washington or whatever now determines all global power dynamics. No, those days are over. Just because you have Trump in office, just because you have, I don't know, Zionist Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, neocons here and there, this doesn't change the reality of the global shift at all. And you will have to adapt. Washington will have to adapt. Trump will have to adapt. Zionists in Washington will have to adapt. So having them in office doesn't mean now we're going to go backwards and you're going to now change the tilt of the planet back in your favor. No, not at all. You're just making it harder on yourselves. And you're just deciding, if these people stay, okay, here's the other thing also. Internationally, if we look at Trump's first administration, his first term, internationally, he's extremely pragmatic. He's a pragmatic deal maker. He's not adventurous. He believes in making deals. And he has, as I've talked about many times, he's very connected. He's very close to the Khalij. He's very close to bin Salman. He's close to bin Zayed. He's close to the Gulf. He's close to the Arabs. So I don't personally think that he's interested in war and the neocon approach to the world. And even if his cabinet appointees might be interested in those things, they're not going to get to do whatever they want. And this may or may not lead to them leaving the administration at some point. They may be in there thinking that they can run things, but it's not going to turn out that way. And it's not going to, and this isn't necessarily just because of Trump. Biden couldn't do whatever he wanted to do. The Biden White House couldn't do whatever they wanted to do because you're not the center of the universe anymore. You have to respond to the rest of the world now. You have to respond to the global south. You have to respond to China, to Russia, to Saudi Arabia, to BRICS. You don't run the show. You're not the only ones anymore. So it doesn't matter who Trump puts in his cabinet. At the way the global power dynamics are now is that you have to have people in your cabinet, you have to have people in your government who can work with the rest of the world. And if they can't, it's just going to be more difficult for you. That's all. It's only going to be more difficult for you. In my opinion, I think that Trump's election, as I said when it happened, I think that it has made the road easier for the transition to the global south. I think it's made it easier. I'm not overreacting to these cabinet appointments because, like I said, I don't even know how long they're going to last anyway. And I don't know how much power they're going to have, how much autonomy they're going to have. And at the end of the day, you're not running things.
Yeah, and it's just been a minute. Wait and see.
Well, he hasn't even gotten in office yet. He's still president-elect. So between now and January, he could have a fight with any of them. He could change his mind with any of them.